Great, fantastic. So slightly delayed, but nonetheless, here we are. Welcome to this evening's webinar. My name is Katrin Häuser. I'm the director of Little Yoga Space and very excited to be talking to Sophia and Lucy here this evening about anxiety and some yoga tools to help with managing anxiety. They will really just take over in a moment, and I shall leave them to it. I will introduce them first though. And if anybody has any questions at all, I will be keeping an eye on the chat. I'll be staying here as your host and looking out for including any technical issues. If you have any questions on the subject, then either make a mental note or maybe put them in the chat so that we will be able to get to them at the end, and we will make sure we will allow time for questions. So I am really excited to talk to Lucy and Sophia here. Lucy, some of you might know from events at the Yoga Space or from some previous webinars, as we've done a few before. She's originally trained in Hatha and Ashtanga Yoga, but now has really changed a lot her way to a much more embodied way, allowing more space to drop out of the mind and then into the body. And so there is a combination really influencing her around from yoga, as well as somatic movement and breath work to rebalance and calm the nervous system. So that's really been her practice and the practices that she loves to share now. And so maybe today we will hear Lucy speak from a slightly different angle. Some of you might remember the previous talks with Lucy were from the lens of Ayurveda. And then I want to welcome Sophia, who, well, some of you obviously know. And Sophia is a clinical psychologist and a certified psychotherapist, and she works in a rehab clinic, but is also a yoga teacher. She used to live in Lisbon, but is now joining us from Germany. But good news is that she will be back here very, very soon, as Lucy and Sophia will be sharing a workshop together very soon. And that's on the 15th of April. We'll tell you all about that later. So trained in Hatha and Ashtanga Yoga, then continued her yoga journey with Yin and yoga therapy and a more trauma-informed approach to teaching yoga, and is now also teaching to the patients in the rehab clinic. And just on the side, as if that wasn't enough, she also runs a yoga retreat company and hosts many retreats all around Europe. So I am excited to hear their knowledge and experience on this topic and their thoughts and ideas. Those of you who know me know that I also work also a lot around anxiety and stress and chronic pain. So I am looking forward to maybe also learning something here today. And so on that note, I'm going to hand over to the two of you and take it away.
Hi, everybody. So I was just going to give a little overview of me and Sophia and kind of how we came to work together. So we met through yoga, actually. We met the first week that both of us moved to Lisbon. We met at a yoga class that I was teaching. And then, yeah, we just had lots of really interesting conversations about yoga, mental health, also Sophia's training as a psychotherapist, which was really interesting to me also. Yeah, and we talked a lot about doing something that kind of involved both things, and just how well the two things kind of complemented each other, psychotherapy and the yoga teachings. And also in terms of our personal experiences, how, beneficial we had found both practices to be for ourselves personally. Yes, and I mean, it's kind of talking about anxiety can be quite difficult sometimes because it's such a wide range of a spectrum, and people can, use the word very like freely, when it can be just like simple worrying about something to being kind of like debilitatingly, hard to manage. So it can be sometimes difficult to explain to people who have not experienced it, or it can be quite hard to articulate the actual feelings and sensations of anxiety also. So that's why we've been quite passionate about sharing practices that can really help with that, and to know that it's something that we all do experience on some degree or another. And for me, a lot of my favorite teachers are kind of yoga, Buddhist teachers and psychotherapists. So it's something that I always like, that combination of the two things. And it's interesting to see kind of the traditional philosophy and teachings and how they are being used in modern therapy now. And also the mind-body connection is being talked about a lot more. So it's not just like from the neck upwards, it's kind of this whole psychosomatic, whole interconnected experience that, obviously we do talk about that in yoga already. Yes, so these are the kind of things that we talked about, we would talk about a lot. And again, things that we found personally to be beneficial for us. And really the idea behind this webinar and the workshop was to provide tools and techniques, and a toolbox that people can draw from, throughout our lives, because it doesn't really, we're not going to get to a point where it's all gone and everything's fine. Like, life happens and anxiety happens, but we can, there are ways to manage it. So these are the things that we kind of felt passionate about sharing. And so I'm going to let Sophia talk now, but I'll just talk about my own experience a little bit here, and why I came to do yoga. So I'd say I always had quite a bit of anxiety in my 20s, and it was something that I kind of did experience day to day, and have had like periods where it's been very, very intense, and also experienced kind of some OCD, pure O OCD symptoms also, which I didn't even know that's what it was until recently. But that's something that shows up for me in very stressful times. And so it was, I was drawn to yoga because I felt like it was something that would be of benefit to me and would help to calm these anxieties and stresses that I had. And for sure, I think over time, yoga philosophy, pranayama, somatic movements, practices, therapy itself, have been part of a kind of healing process for me. And again, these are the practices that I do share now also with other people. And it gets easier over time to kind of draw on these things, and it kind of becomes a little bit more embodied and integrated again with consistent practice. Just dealing with the stresses and the anxieties as they come up, as is life. So that's kind of us and me. And now I'll let Sophia talk a little bit as well.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to be here and to share. And as you just said about or talked about stresses that come up in life, I want to start with a little personal story, because yesterday Lucy and I were on the phone talking about the workshop, the webinar, what we're gonna do and talk about here, the tools that we're gonna share. And after we hung up, I was on the train, I have to say, and I got another phone call, and it was that kind of phone call that you don't want to get. And I found out that one of my dearest friends has cancer, and that was really immediately after we hung up, Lucy and I. And I was like, that's an interesting timing of life sometimes. And I was definitely feeling anxiety in that moment, and cancer is a little anxiety trigger for me as well, because I lost a friend of cancer when I was young, and my mom has a severe form of cancer. And I was sitting in the train surrounded by people that I don't know, and just talked about all the tools that you can do when you feeling stressed or anxious, actually. And yeah, all the things and the little steps that I did, we will talk about in a minute. But before that, I want to talk about what anxiety actually is, because as Lucy already mentioned, it's a word that, yeah, you hear a lot, and there's a reason for it, because already clinical anxiety, so people who suffer from severe forms of anxiety, it's 25% of the worldwide population at the moment, numbers rising. So it's a lot. And on the other hand, anxiety is something really normal and something that we all, like every one of us, knows anxiety and how it feels, and everyone, yeah, at some point in their life feels anxious or scared. And it's actually an important tool that arose during evolution, so we could actually run away from that tiger, and something why we are actually still alive as a species. And yeah, it's just interesting what happens in the brain. You see the tiger, or today it's more maybe the email, the work email, or just that phone call that I mentioned a minute ago, that will just bring your brain to a full stress reaction, and just some different feelings that you can have. You actually see the tiger, you get the email, you get the phone call, and your brain turns on the sympathetic nervous system, which is the one that is, kind of brings the stress in. It's also a good part. It's not like it's the bad part of the nervous system. It's also really important because it keeps us going, but it's also the one that can, bring you into the fight, flight, or freeze mode. And you might notice an increased heart rate, or sweating, trembling, or shaking. You might feel nervous. Even when it's maybe getting worse, it's hard to breathe, or you feel restless and tense, or just a general feeling of panic. And that's some of the symptoms that you can feel when you feel anxious. And if those feelings even get stronger and stronger, and you might even be scared of being scared, you might experience a panic attack. And one part of the reaction chain that is unconsciously happening in your brain is that you connect all the scene that is happening in the moment to past experiences. And that is very important and life-saving. For example, you're crossing a road, and your light is green, and a really fast car comes, and you see the car and you think, okay, shit, this car is not stopping, because if a car is running really fast, usually it's hard for them to stop, because you know that from past experiences. So you might run to one of the sides of the street to not get hit by the car. And if your brain wouldn't know what the situation, that a fast car can be dangerous, you might just be standing there and the car would hit you. So it's very life-saving that the whole stress chain is happening. And on the other hand, it can be bad, because you have a little something happening, like a work email, and you get a really, like, your reaction to that stress is bigger than the actual event. So you can experience both ways, and it's helpful, but it's also sometimes not helpful. And there's an interesting fact, actually, that there's studies on that every time when you get an email, or like a text message, and you hear a tone, you stop breathing for a little moment, just like, and and it's crazy, because think about it, how many times a day that happens to you. I mean, I always have my phone on silent, but a lot of people don't. And even when you're at work and you get emails, and it's a little stress reactor, even if it's not big, but most of the times we are not really in the rest and digest mood, especially when we're running around and having our day and doing this and that. And it's important, but it's also important to calm down. And we just don't do that enough anymore. And especially nowadays that we have so many stimulants coming from everywhere, and it's just, the world is crazy. And the world has always been crazy, but now, you know, looking at your phone or looking or watching TV or scrolling through Instagram is not relaxing. It might be even triggering you without noticing. So it is hard. It is hard nowadays to de-stress and to not be anxious. This is why the numbers go up. But there's a good news as well. We can do something about it, and that's where yoga comes into the picture. And yeah, Lucy will tell you about that.
Yeah, so yoga for anxiety, as Sophia was talking about the nervous system, that this is what yoga works with, really, is the nervous system. And through the different practices of yoga, so yoga asana, the movement, breathwork practices, pranayama practice, also kind of like daily routines and lifestyle, which can be yogic teachings, we can start to spend a little bit more time in the parasympathetic nervous system, this rest and digest state, and less in that fight or flight sympathetic, kind of more alert, constant alertness. Again, like Sophia said, we do need that. It also builds resilience, so we can go between the two. So we don't get stuck, you know, because it's beneficial to sometimes go into that state, but obviously we want to be able to come out. And a lot of the time we just kind of go there and we get stuck and we're just there like all the time. So yoga can be good to build that resilience and to notice when we're there, to have the introspection, to notice when we're in that state, because sometimes we get so used to it that we don't even know also. And with the Yoga Sutras, one of the classic yoga texts, Patanjali talks about yoga is, the aim of yoga is always to reduce mental activity. So whatever you do as your yoga practice, the aim was always to bring down the fluctuations of the mind and to reduce mental noise and activity. So it doesn't really matter what that practice is. Obviously, he doesn't specify either. And there's many ways to do that, many practices we can do. So it is always the name of the game. That is what yoga is designed to do. It's meant to make us more calm. Yes, so I think a good practice or a good way to start to implement this is to get a good baseline, because, you know, it's well and good we could go to a yoga, you know, vinyasa flow class or something, and you know, maybe we're going to feel a bit better short-lived afterwards. But again, it takes time, and it is a little bit of building a consistent practice to see the benefits, but it really works. You just have to do it, basically, the practices. So I think a good way to get started is just to build a baseline where you start to drop into that parasympathetic state, perhaps in the morning. That can be a nice time to practice. And I think for me personally, breath work has always been pretty good at getting me there. Also asana, a short movement practice, or something somatic can also be very good, just to get the baseline where the mind is just a bit more quiet. And again, it's nice in the morning because we just start the day with that kind of calmer headspace. And it affects our thoughts as well. When we're heightened, we're going to think more negative thoughts. We're thinking from fear, we're afraid. And when we're in that calmer state, we're just naturally thinking in a bit more of a positive, grateful kind of, these thoughts just naturally come. And so also they would say in the yoga text, you know, you don't just practice for yourself, you practice for everybody else, because the effects of that on you being a more positive person and calmer person of it naturally ripples out into your environment and everybody else around you. Sorry, that's my dog who also has anxiety. On brand, she's barking at nothing. So there's many practices we can use, and we're going to share them now, some of the really good basic ones. Sorry, my dog. So some of the really good basic breathwork ones, these are my favorite ones. So Phoebe, shh. maybe she needs to do these breathwork things with us as well. Okay, so we're going to practice one of them. I'm going to tell you about some of the others, and obviously in the workshop we'll practice these and go into more depth, and you can take them away with you. We'll give you more information. One of the really good, and so it's just so simple, is the belly breathing. So this is resonance breathing. So you can do it seated, or I find it much easier to do it lying down. You can do it with a book or something on your belly, and you're literally just belly breathing, 6 in, 6 out. For a count of 6, you inflate the belly, and a count of 6, you deflate the belly. And it's just, that is the practice. It's just 6 in, 6 out. You could also try it sitting up. Some people do it that way. I just find it much easier sitting down. Cyclical breathing. This is quite a new one that there's been a lot of scientific studies done on, and a lot of people are talking about now. So this is one we're going to do together. We'll just do 5 rounds of this breath. But this is a super good one, and it works well if you do 5 minutes of it a day. And even just the 5 minutes has been proven to increase mood levels and the level of mental activity also. So it's quite a nice, you get a lot of bang for your buck. It's quite effective, and it's short, and it's easy. You can do it any time of day. So we'll do this one together. So you can just sit however you're sitting, just as long as you have kind of a straightish spine. And we'll just take a minute. You can close your eyes here. You can just let your shoulders roll. We can let the face relax a little bit. And to begin with, just come to notice your natural breath, just your natural inhale and your natural exhale, just in and out through the nose. And then we'll start the breath. So to begin with, we're just going to take an inhale in through the nose. Nice deep inhale in through the nose. And then when you've got to what you feel is the top of the breath, see if you can take another inhale on top of that one. So we breathe in again. And then to exhale, we're going to breathe out through the mouth. So as if you're blowing out a candle, we blow out through the mouth. Okay, and we'll take again. So we're going to take that inhale in through the nose. And then again, we breathe on top. And then exhaling, we blow out through the mouth. Nice. We'll take 3 more. So again, we inhale through the nose. And again, up to the top. And then exhale, blowing out through the mouth. And again, inhaling through the nose. Inhale again. And exhale, blow out through the mouth. Nice. So we'll just take 1 more. Inhaling through the nose. Inhale again. Fill the lungs, and then exhale. Blowing out through the mouth. Nice. And then you can just let that go. Let your breath return to normal. And then that is the technique. You can also Google this. There's lots of information on it and videos. Cyclical breathing. Yeah, and just 5 minutes of that a day. I counted that to be about 20 rounds. Also, if you don't want to time it, about 20 rounds is about 5 minutes. So you can also just count it on your fingers, which is a nice also focus point to add in. So that's a really great one. Ujjayi breathing also, which you may have done in yoga classes, is just a really good grounding one, which is just where we inhale as normal through the nose. And then as we exhale also out through the nose, but you just gently or subtly contract the back of the throat. So you make a slight sound. It's as if you're fogging up a mirror with your breath. It's that movement of the throat. And that's just what we do on the exhale. Again, it's the very traditional way of breathing in yoga. Ujjayi breath. Yeah, Yeah, and another practice I wanted to talk about, this is something that we will again go into more detail on the workshop, and we'll do some proper practices around this, but I just wanted to touch upon it. Just as I think it is a good system to work with, I find it very beneficial actually for anxiety, is the chakra system. So, I mean, it's an esoteric system. I mean, it can be also kind of connected to tangible glands in the body and energy centers, but I mean, it is working with the energy body. And so there's 7 chakras which go up through the central channel. And for anxiety, I would say the root chakra, the first chakra, and the 3rd chakra are very beneficial to work with. And I mean, whether you believe in the chakra system or not, they're good tools for self-inquiry, because each one is attached to different emotions and different parts of the psyche. So they're just a good tool to explore some of these themes. And the root chakra is really about our basic needs, safety, primal needs, just having our needs met, which is something that we don't feel when we feel anxious. A lot of the time we feel afraid, or we feel like we're not safe for some reason. So that can be good. Any grounding practices can work with the first chakra. Anything that's floor based, also rolling on the floor, walking barefoot on the grass, these kinds of things can be good grounding practices. And then also the 3rd chakra, which is kind of based around personal power. And this is something I found very useful when dealing with anxiety, because anxiety can feel so huge and overwhelming, and we can feel so small and like we're powerless and we're afraid. Again, anxiety is a lot of fear, and we fear that we might lose control of a situation, or we fear the future, or we feel in some way powerless, or we feel in some way less than, or like we don't have enough belief in ourselves to deal with whatever it is that we're worrying about. So the 3rd chakra really works with those themes. And yeah, just it can be quite empowering to kind of take our power back, and to know that we can deal with whatever it is that we're worrying about, to know that in the past that we've dealt with things and we've always come out stronger, these kinds of things. So yeah, and also that kind of thing with the inner critic, we can often be very hard on ourselves, and it can be a good tool to kind of address that and question it and be like, okay, maybe I don't need to listen to this. Maybe I can, again, make myself bigger, make the anxiety smaller. So that is something that I feel is super useful. And again, we can in the workshop do some more practices around, also affirmations you can do around these, around the chakras. There's many chakra meditations also, if you want to Google it again. We'll put some stuff in the email also, that will send out some links and resources for these things as well. Yes, so that's the yoga stuff on anxiety. Obviously, there is just so much. I could just talk about it for ages, but we'll, again, in the workshop, go into more detail and more specific practices as well. But Sophia's going to talk about some more psychotherapy practices as well now.
Yes, because I gave you a little cliffhanger from my story that happened yesterday. Of course, I want to tell you what I did in that specific situation. And so I'm going to share with you 6 things that we also teach the patient and the clients in the hospital, in the clinic where I work, what we all can do when we feel anxious. And it doesn't really matter if you're experiencing a panic attack. Obviously, it might be harder to do some of the things then, because if it's really strong, that feeling of anxiety, then it's just harder to do things. And you can even do the things when it's just a little bit of anxiety. So it doesn't really matter. And there's no specific order. It's just the things that you can do. And most of them are also scientifically proven, which is awesome, because especially the ones coming from yoga, which is so nice, that shows the combination really works well. And as Katrin mentioned in the beginning, I'm also teaching yoga in the clinic, and people love it and they ask for it, and I always get the feedback that it's helping them so much and that everyone just needs more of it. And even my coworkers, they would like to join. So yeah, just on a side note. So the first thing, actually something that we just did, is breath work. And it's so powerful. It's probably one of the most underestimated tools that we have as humans. I mean, we breathe about 20,000 times a day, and mostly we don't even notice it. We notice it when it's hard to breathe, which is something that can happen when we feel anxious. And that's a good moment to breathe deeply if you feel some sort of anxiety. Even, as I mentioned earlier, if you just get this email and you now know that you stop breathing for a second, even getting that email or that text message can be a good reminder to just breathe deeply. Because, as I said, mostly we don't notice that we're breathing. And if we do it more, like just have little reminders. When you walk through a door, remind yourself, oh, let's take a deep breath, and it will calm you immediately, even if it's just a little bit. Of course, one deep breath, won't fix it, but it's a good thing to do it. And especially when you're having a panic attack, it can be really hard to breathe very deep, because it might be even hurtful in your chest, and it's just like, because you're like over breathing. That's what happens when we're really scared. So you can put your hands on your chest and just start to breathe, to inhale a bit. And as Lucy did it with you, it's really the best tool to just to blow the air out, because it's much easier. And if you even do a little sound with it, like we do in yoga, the or you can do the ooh and put your back a little bit, your head a little bit back, because it's stimulating your vagus nerve, which is also stimulating your parasympathetic nervous system, which is calming you down. So you can blow out, or you can even do it in little steps like that. Both is a little bit easier, and obviously every breath you do, which is a little bit deeper than the one you're doing when you're panicking, is better. So that's one of the things, and you can do it anytime, anywhere, and it's so good and so helpful. The second thing that is also proven in studies is, well, it's actually 2 points. So the first thing is grounding, as Lucy mentioned as well. Just feel yourself, feel your feet on the ground, feel your body in the moment, because fear is a lot about the future or the past, which is so important that you realize that in your head. That's something that people with post-traumatic stress disorder, that they feel, because they get scared from something. For example, you hear loud noise and it just reminds you of something, some violence that you experienced when you were a child. And then you get scared, and the whole unconscious reaction, stress reaction in your brains that I talked about earlier is happening. So you might be very scared, and just realizing, okay, coming back to the present moment, you're here in the now, you're safe, feel your feet on the ground, and that can really change something. It's something that I tell all my post-traumatic disorder patients, because that happens to them all the time, and they never know what a trigger can be. So they try to ground themselves, and then they breathe. And this is something that is easy, because when you're stressed and feeling that anxiety, you cannot really think clearly. It's really hard. But breathing is something you're doing anyways, and the chances are high you're standing or sitting somewhere. So you can also feel your body. And then the next step is that you move, because also, as Lucy mentioned, that like the fear can just overwhelm you. And if you freeze, because freezing is sympathetic nervous system, when you freeze and you don't move, the fear will just stuck with you. It will just stay in your body, and you have to move and let it out, move it out. And it can be dancing, it can be just going out for a walk, just something, just a little, just that when you're sitting and you can't move more, just do something that your body is moving and that the energy can flow, as we would say as a yogi. And that's, yeah, the third step basically. And it's good to do the other things before, because it can be hard to move if you can't even breathe. So try to breathe and try to ground, try to feel yourself in the present moment, and then move your body. And the fourth step or thing you can do is talk to someone or talk to yourself. So I think a lot is when you're scared, you also feel disconnected. We feel alone, or we feel lonely, and we feel like overwhelmed by everything. And obviously we all feel that, as I mentioned. I mean, even 25% of the world population is suffering from severe anxiety, and we're all suffering from anxiety. So it's so important to talk to someone and to have someone lift the weight of your shoulders. And if you don't have anyone to talk to, then talk to yourself. And that's a very psychological question. What would your friend or the person that you like to talk to in that moment, but maybe it's not available, what would they say to you? That's a question you can ask yourself, because it's really hard to have a nice self-talk, but it's so important. So try to ask yourself, what would whoever that is, my best friend, tell me now? And try to answer that question. And even when you're moving and telling yourself, maybe you remember from like some movies. In movies, when you have the main character going through something and then they will have a positive self-talk. In the movie, obviously, you can hear that, because otherwise it will be boring for us if it's just in their brain and we couldn't hear anything. But it's actually something we can do. Just, okay, it will be okay, it will be fine. And that is something that I did yesterday. I talked to myself like, okay, my friend, he will survive that. And it's just the beginning, and there's so many opportunities. And I took a deep breath, and I was like, okay, I'm in the train, I'm sitting, I'm feeling my body, I grounded myself. And then I actually went to the toilet so I would move my body. And I was talking positively to myself, which is also kind of easy, but we tend to not do that. And we mostly have a very negative self-talk. And the fifth thing is laugh. And that's obviously hard when you're scared, but humor is so important. And I see that in the hospital every day. People just don't laugh enough. And I always try to make them laugh. And we have a lot of jokes going on in the sessions. And maybe there's something funny you can watch. It's also good to have your mind shift on something else. But yeah, there's even studies. I don't have a pen right now. Oh, do I? I do. That show that if you put a pen in your mouth like this for 3 minutes, and I think even 1 minute is good, but even the longer the better, it will change the stress reaction in your brain. It's really cool. I mean, it's such a stupid trick, but you might already laugh doing that. So it's a good thing to do. And number 6 is a really hard one and also powerful one. Try to change your perspective. And we will also go into more depth about that in the workshop, since we don't have so much time left. But I want to share that idea because it helped me tremendously, and I always teach that to my patients as well. In systemic psychotherapy, which is the psychotherapy that I'm doing, it's called the systemic glasses. And I think it's a really cool thing because it's really, you can just, remember that every time, every moment you're looking at the world, it's not objective, obviously. You're always looking through your glasses and just being aware, what glasses am I wearing? Am I wearing the problem glasses right now? Is everything a big problem? Is everything just too much for me? And I'm just seeing the world negative. And the moment you notice how you are perceiving the world, how you're seeing things, is the moment that you can take control back. And it's the moment that you can decide to take off these glasses and to take on the solution glasses and ask yourself, okay, it is a big problem and it's a fucking messy world sometimes and things are just crazy and I feel overwhelmed, but I'm here today. I survived so many things before. I can probably handle this problem again. And even if I don't see the solution right now, there might be one. And what can be a solution? And how did I solve things in the past? So there's so many questions you can ask yourself on that. And you can even wear the humor glasses and try to see the things a little bit more. Yeah, maybe it's even funny that this is happening to me, that I get a phone call right after we talked about the anxiety workshop that I'm holding that gives me anxiety. So even wearing the humor glasses for a second. And there's so many more glasses that you can wear, obviously. And it's a really hard thing to take them off. And I know that but even if you just do it for a second, that little second might be the thing that gives you energy to get up and move, or to just, push that green button and call your friend, whatever that is, even if it's just for a second. And it's something that you can remember like during your day, because it's not even when you're anxious, you can ask yourself, what glasses are you wearing right now? With what glasses are you perceiving this workshop? What is happening? Is there something like, oh, it's cool and it's funny? Or is this like, oh, actually, I'm really tired? Or how are you seeing the world right now? How are you seeing your day? And what glasses are you wearing? Okay. With that, I think with at least my part, I came to an end. I don't know if Lucy, you want to add something from
I just was I didn't mention this actually at the beginning, I don't think, but just what you were saying about just laughing and having fun or doing something that just makes you smile. I think that was such a big part of me feeling better as well, because I think once I found yoga, I went into a bit of a, oh, I can be with my suffering and I'm going to meditate and I'm going to heal myself and fix this brokenness of me, which kind of goes against yoga teaching anyway, because it teaches us that we are already whole as we are and we don't need to necessarily fix ourselves. But if the wellness industry can feed into that feeling that we need to be healed constantly. And I felt like I had to be with it all the time and it had to be intense. And it was, the depths of me I was exploring. And then I think especially last 3 years, I guess, maybe because COVID as well on top of that was like just a very heavy thing. I was just like, I need to have some fun. And it was just, doing stuff that's like playing, doing stuff that is just fun, doing stuff with other people, and just being a bit more kind of lighthearted about things that I was consuming also. Not everything being kind of a really educational podcast or a really heavy documentary, just kind of allowing things to be a bit more fun and not trying to work on myself all the time. That was really freeing and again, very, very healing, I think, for me. Not that I need to be healed, but feels, very soothing to my soul. So yeah, I think fun and playing is something that's not really recognized enough. So yeah, that was just a side note. But yeah, like, so we went surfing together as well. That was something that we did. That was one of these activities for me that was just like fun. I felt like a kid again. Like it was just very, very things that I kind of went back to that I didn't realize that I even needed. But yeah. So yes, I think that is everything that we talked about. Yeah, so obviously there is just so many things we could talk about, and there's just like, there is just so many tools and there's so many ways, and there's, a lot of ways to build your own practice, and there's always a way in for everybody. So yeah, and that's what we wanted to do in the workshop. We'll obviously go into more depth of a lot of these practices, so you really will have like tools to take away with you, and they can be personalized to whatever it is that you need, wherever you're at as well. Yeah, and also I do one-to-ones as well. I've done one-to-ones with people with anxiety in Lisbon or online. So if that's something you were interested as well in building a home practice, that's something that I can do as well. And yeah, I think that's everything. The workshop's the 15th of April, so like 2 weeks at Little Yoga Space, and it's 12 till 2. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, you can always ask us, and yeah, I guess you'll get information.
Thank you both for all of this. That was packed with information, and I wonder whether anyone here has any questions at all. Please do put them in the chat, or you can raise your hand as well with the little reactions button thing. I was wondering if you might have any tools for that kind of moment when you might have an anxiety attack. The 7 steps, I guess some of those can be really helpful. And would you say there is maybe even something else to do more in a real, like a first aid type situation?
So, well, as I'm myself experiencing panic attacks still to this day, not like very often, fortunately, but still happening. And I would say what helps me the most, and is definitely the things that I talked about. It's obviously different because it depends on what your panic attack looks like. Are you having difficulties to breathe, or are you just crying a lot? Are you just being really confused and walking around and don't know what to do? So it kind of depends what it's looking like, I think. But really breathing, taking a deep breath and grounding is probably the most helpful. And it's really important to say that sometimes it's just hard to handle the situation on your own. And it's so important to ask for help. If you're somewhere where there's other people, ask for help, because maybe even like touching another person's hands can help you so much. And hearing another person's slow breathing, just getting a hug is something that I didn't mention, but it's really, really helpful. And that always helps me a lot. And it's just like, okay, there's someone else. Sometimes you're alone and then it doesn't work, but then I think all the steps that I said is something that is really helpful.
So what that's really, I guess, well, saying to me is that it's one crucial part in this is to maybe really know what our own tendencies are. Which way do I tend to react to a challenging situation? Because I think most of us probably do have a sort of default process of how the panic attack or anxiety attack expresses itself, and to know which tools we personally find most helpful. So I guess part of that is also to try them all and see how they work for you and what do they do for you. So you have, because I guess not in every situation all of the tools might be all that accessible or available to you, right? So if you're really struggling to breathe, then taking a deep breath might just not be what is a good option for you. But then you might need something else, right? You might need somebody to hold your hands or touch or something, right? So that sounds to me in a way that we could actually get prepared. We can prepare ourselves for those moments, right? So the more tools we have in this toolbox that we have, like, I don't know, in our rucksack, and we can draw from, but it's really about also knowing your own tendency.
Yeah, definitely. So helpful to get to know yourself. And even for me, I experience panic attacks every time it's different. I have some tendencies, of course, and I know what triggers them. And it's also really important to, if you were talking about preventing them, you know, what are you doing that it might be possible that like you're stressed or that a panic attack occurs. So maybe, you know, just never saying no and just doing too much. Or of course, something that I mentioned that happened to me yesterday is something you cannot really prepare for. And that's the thing that just happens in life. But it's also, of course, good, that you know the tools and know what you can do, and just see maybe also what comes to your mind in that moment, because as I mentioned, you cannot maybe think clearly, and the next thing that comes to your mind, just try it, and you can't make it worse.
There's another question here about some recommendations for reading materials and other resources. So Lucy mentioned a couple of teachers to check out, Tara Brach and Michael Stone. They've got tons of material on YouTube.
Yeah,
they're going to send out a bit of a reading and resource list as well. So we're doing a follow-up email with all of like the recording and all the materials. So make sure that's included.
Definitely.
I don't know, Sophia, if you have any other names that people should check out.
Yeah, I will send you a list. I have I have a lot, but maybe it's just some of my favorites, and I will include that in the email as well.
Great. Any other final questions from anyone here? Then please do put that in the chat or wave. So Lucy already mentioned there is an in-person workshop happening for those of you who are based in Lisbon. And that's happening on Saturday, the 15th of April from 12 till 2, so a 2-hour workshop. And you can find the details on the website. As part of the follow-up email, I will send you the direct booking link as well, just in case anyone is interested, and the details for Lucy and Sophia, how you can reach out to both of them on an individual basis if you are interested to follow up with them, of course. I can't see any other questions here, so I guess we will leave you all to enjoy the rest of your evening. A big thank you for Sophia and Lucy's time, sharing their knowledge and wisdom and all these tools and ideas. Thank you so much for joining me here.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Obviously, thank you to everyone who came. The reason we are able to do our work is because you guys are here. So always a real pleasure to connect. There will be some more live sharings and webinars coming up with the yoga space, so keep an eye out for that. Last year we got into a bit of a pattern with these and then paused a little bit over the winter, so my intention very much is to pick this up again and share all this useful content, so keep an eye out. That's it. Thanks everyone, take care.
Thank you. Bye bye.